Hello everybody and welcome back. I am Tiffany with Voices for Independence, Fitness and Activities. I am here sharing some recipes with you. This week we are making dishes through the decades, and today we are in the 1970s. We made a dish this morning that was really popular at parties in the 70s. That was the infamous cheese ball that they served with crackers. It was a favorite dish to take to all the gatherings. Another favorite dish that they had for breakfast, brunch, or dinner sometimes was the quiche. Quiche became hugely popular in the 70s. One of the most popular quiches is the quiche Lorraine. What the quiche Lorraine is, it is an egg-based dish. A quiche is an egg-based dish, which is similar to a pie. And the quiche Lorraine traditionally has onion, bacon, and Swiss or Gruyere cheese in it. So I'm going to show you the steps to make a quiche for yourself this evening. What you'll want to do is you can either make a homemade pie crust, or you can buy a store-bought frozen or ready-made pie crust like I did. I bought the kind that we will have to bake in the oven. So for this egg quiche, what you're going to want to do is put your pie crust in your pie dish. And what we're going to do is you're going to want to bake the pie crust ahead of time most of the way. So I put it in a 350-degree oven for about 20 to 30 minutes. Now, if you are a super baker and you happen to have pie weights, you'll definitely want to use them in your crust. What that is, you put down a piece of parchment paper and these little steel balls that sit on top of the parchment paper, and it holds down the bottom of your crust as it bakes so it doesn't bubble up and crack or rise too much. Because typically when we're baking a pie, we have a filling in it. So go ahead, if you don't have pie weights, what you can do is just poke your pie crust with a fork, which I had done, as you can see, little prick marks in my pie crust. So I already baked my pie crust ahead of time, which is part of the recipe as well. You're going to want to bake it for about 20 to 30 minutes at 350. It's a very light golden brown, so it's not cooked all the way, because this is going to go back in the oven to cook the eggs once we prepare the rest of the quiche. So for quiche Lorraine, what you're going to want to do is you're going to need about 8 ounces or a half a pound of bacon. Now you're going to want to cook that, which I did ahead of time already. You're going to want to cook it to done but not crisp. All right, so I had done that ahead of time. You want to cut it up into bite-sized pieces as well, because this is going to be mixed in with the eggs in the quiche. Then you're going to take a 1/4 cup of onion, and in a medium heat skillet, we are going to saute our onions. So just cook them until they're translucent, or meaning that you can they become a little bit see-through and they become very fragrant. All right, so I started my onions already. And then once those have cooked, we'll give it another few seconds here. We're going to throw our bacon back in with our 1/4 cup of onions and let that brown a little bit more, spreading out the bacon. If you cooked your bacon ahead of time and then you want to take your bacon out and put your onions right in a little bit of the bacon grease, that's fine as well. They recommend it. I just did mine in separate steps. So my onions are just in a little bit of olive oil. So we're just going to crisp up the bacon a little bit. We don't want to bake too crisp, because again, it's going to go in our quiche and back in the oven. So as that sautés a little more, we're going to turn that heat down. It'll continue to cook a little bit, and now we're going to make the egg portion of the quiche. So what you're going to need for the quiche part is you're going to need 5 eggs, and we're going to break them into a bowl. My one egg is cracked a little bit here, so we're going to do this guy first. All right, he safely made it in the bowl with no shells. So you're going to want 5 eggs. I'm going to whisk these together with about 1 1/4 cup of heavy cream. That's traditionally what they use in a quiche. It'll make your eggs a little bit thicker and fluffier as they bake in the oven. But if you're trying to avoid that extra fat, you can use whatever milk substitute or regular milk that you rather have in the recipe, and it will bake up just as well. Now we're going to whisk those up. Let me grab my fork. I thought I grabbed my whisk. I must not have, but you can whip up eggs real quick with a fork as well. So we're going to whisk our eggs up, and then we're going to add 1 1/4 cup of the heavy cream. I have both options out just because Typically, I don't keep heavy cream in the house, so I would use a regular low-fat milk or unsweetened almond milk in my quiche. But I'm trying to stick to tradition here since we're doing dishes through the decades in 1970s. I don't think the almond milk was so that popular in the 1970s. All right, so I'm going to add my 1.5 cups. Let's see how much I have left. We're going to add, I had just about 1 cup, so I'm going to add about 1/2 cup, or pardon me, 1/4 cup, 1 1/4 cup. So I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of my regular milk, and again, that will be fine to use in the recipe instead of the heavy cream. It'll still set up the same. You just might have to bake it a little bit longer for extra firmness. All right, so 1 1/4 cup of eggs, or milk in our 5 eggs. Then we're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to that. And then they also call for 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. So we're going to add that in as well. So we get our nutmeg out. And then we're going to add a dash of salt and pepper. If you want to and you have it, you can use white pepper. They suggest that sometimes just so you don't have black specks in your eggs. But it doesn't make a huge difference because we do have bacon in there as well. So that can disguise the pepper. So about 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon, I only have my black pepper, so we're using black pepper in the quiche Lorraine this evening. And then we're going to whip those up. And then we're also going to add our cheese in. We're going to, I believe it's 1 1/4 cup of your Gruyere cheese, or you can use Swiss, which is the more traditional version. I use Swiss. Now, for instance, if you have a hard time finding shredded Swiss at the store, because it could be a little bit more of a unique item, you can also buy Swiss by the pound or 1/2 pound brick, and you can shred your own. There's wonderful graters out there that are super easy to use, like this one. It has a closed compartment on it, a nice handle or stand, so it will set up on your tabletop. Let me set it somewhere for you as you shred, so you don't have to hold it. And then it also measures the amount on the side. So it's a great kitchen tool to have, and that's what I use to shred mine, because when I went to the store, they didn't have the shredded Swiss. So call for a 1 1/4 cup. So I'm going to fill my 1 cup measuring device with the shredded Swiss, and then we're going to save the other 1/4 cup for actually after we fill the pie crust. All right, so I'm going to add that in. And we're going to whisk that around to attempt to distribute it through the eggs. Now know that when we do dump this into the pie crust, the cheese may settle, but we can use our fork to spread it around to try and make it more evenly distributed. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a majority of that onions and bacons that we had cooked up here, and we're going to add that to our quiche Lorraine mix as well. It's our egg mix that we're going to be stirring together to add to the pie crust. Now this is going to go back in your 350-degree oven for another 30 to 35 minutes. So a quiche, it does take a bit of time to make and create, but one good thing I know that lots of times at my house, my family's house growing up, my mom would always make quiche on special occasions or holidays. Most often it was on a holiday for a holiday brunch, and what she would do on occasion is prepare her egg base the night before, and just put it in a container or a pitcher, and then in the morning when it was time to bake them before everybody woke up for brunch, we would pour them into the pie crust. So that's a nice way if you're having a brunch and you want to prep ahead of time. You can definitely put the egg mixture in the refrigerator and keep it until you're ready to bake. So now what we're going to do, we are going to take that pie crust ever so carefully. The pie crust is cool, and I'm just doing it. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. We're going to pour that egg mixture right into the pie crust. Now I would recommend, I have a baking dish here on my counter. You might not be able to see it, but it's like a cookie sheet. I would recommend putting your pie crust on the cookie sheet prior to pouring. It's a nice little tip and trick for when you want to transport this pie or any other pie that may be liquid based, like a pumpkin, before you bake it. it would be much easier to put it in the oven when it's on the cookie sheet. It's easier to carry and balance. So I am just using my fork to spread out a little bit of that cheese and bacon so it's a little more evenly distributed through my quiche. I'm going to top it off with a little bit more of that Swiss because we had that 1.25 cups that it called for. And now I am also going to top it off with a little bit of that bacon and onion, and we're going to pop it in the oven. And this is a delicious meal that can serve several people. And you can have it for breakfast, brunch, lunch, or dinner. So I hope you enjoyed the recipe today. We're making dishes through the decades. We're in the 1970s. And we'll be back tomorrow, and we're on to the 80s. I hope you guys enjoy your evening, and I'll see you then.